Hi, everybody. I know this isn't normally how an episode of The Dip starts, but I wanted to quickly step in before the episode starts and give you guys a quick little announcement about stuff. My name is Ray Barber. I am one of the new members of OSBS and the current podcast manager for The Dip, which means I'm the one who's editing stuff right now and things like that. So if you have a problem with how it's getting edited, you talk to me. I don't quite know what episode. This is episode 5 that I'm making right now. This will come out on episode 5 as well. So as of episode 5, there are new members to Open Space Brave Space, which is the student organization that the DIP is created by. You'll meet some of the new OSBS members in this podcast episode because they'll be the ones talking. But I wanted to quickly make a little introductory sort of video to everyone in Open Space Brave Space, not just the original members, but also the new members. Enjoy the little introduction video that I'm gonna make, and yeah, I hope you enjoy the podcast episode.
Y'all, this was an accident. Okay, we ready? Okay, Slay. Hi guys, welcome back to the Dip. My name is Caitlin Frosto,
I'm Savannah Bowl.
And I'm Hera Olson.
and we are some of the newest members of OSBS.
And me and Hera are the new advocates, if you want to elaborate on.
Yeah. So Advocate, or AD for short, is a new branch that is adding on to OSBS, and it is it stands for Advocating for the Destigmatization of Disabilities, and we're just a group that's a part of OSBS to try and bring awareness about disabilities and how to destigmatize them and get them a little bit more understood, especially within the theater world.
Yeah, definitely. So,
Today's episode is about something specific.
Yes, and what is it about?
Today's episode, we are trying to talk about autism for Autism Awareness Month. All of us here are autistic in diagnosis or self-diagnosis ways. So that is why we're all here to talk about that.
Yeah. Okay, so we can start off by telling our own little personal experiences if we want.
yeah.
One of y'all can start.
And we can also cut part of this, so sorry.
No, there's no cuts. You have to be on at all times.
Okay.
Well, you're the only one who has a formal diagnosis. Do you want to go first?
I can, but it's long.
You're the almighty.
Okay, it's long.
Well, how did you, what was the process of figuring out that you thought you were autistic, and when did you decide that you wanted a diagnosis, and that decision of wanting that diagnosis?
Yeah, so honestly, I didn't really even ponder having any sort of mental disability, and definitely not autism, until I was graduated high school when I was 18. And I was kind of more in the social scene a little bit in high school. I had a close-knit group of friends that I grew up with, so I've never really had to try to put myself out there and make new connections. So after I graduated high school, I was really struggling trying to make friends and talk to people, and I just found that I had really unique experiences growing up, specifically with texture and food sensory issues specifically, but I thought that was just me being a picky eater, because I'd been told that my entire life. And I also just thought for a long time that I struggled with really heavy social anxiety, and that's I just assumed it was nothing more than that. And then after I had graduated high school, I was just really struggling, trying to socialize. I would go into conversations or social events with a list of things specifically that I could talk about, or literally like little quips or jokes I could make in case all else failed. And I would keep those on my phone because I would just get so anxious, and I would like almost throw up before social events. I did throw up a couple times before social events. So I was going through a really difficult period in my life where I knew I needed somehow to figure out what was wrong with me, although not necessarily anything was wrong with myself or
You
anything
wanted
was
answers.
bad, but I wanted answers.
Yeah.
I needed validation. And I had talked to someone who said, I think that you could be autistic. And at first I was like really offended by this idea because like,
Me?
like what?
No.
Bitch, you think I'm autistic? But I started doing some more research about what autism is and how it can present, because my entire life I had been trained to think that autistic people could only present themselves in a very specific way, and I knew that I wasn't like that, and so I had disconnected myself from the idea of being autistic, because most studies on autistic people are on white cisgendered men who present entirely differently from women or people of color. So after that, I decided I needed to talk to someone professional about this. So I sought out a therapist of the summer when I was 18, and I went in specifically looking to get advice on how to get evaluated for autism. And I kind of brought in a list with her, like, this is what I struggle with, and this is why I think I'm autistic, and I need you to know every single detail. I think I still have that list saved in my notes on my phone. I was like, I have really bad food sensory issues. I get really nervous. Certain textures or sounds really set me off. And she was like, yeah, I can definitely see the possibility for you that it would be autism, but I can't give you that diagnosis myself. Since I'm a therapist, you would need to go to a psychiatrist. And I was like, okay. So then I contacted a psychiatrist that was set up in the Dallas area, I believe. And I was like, I want to set up an evaluation. And the way the evaluation process kind of works is at first you go in with a one-on-one interview with the psychiatrist. I had a woman psychiatrist, which I thought was very fortunate. I kind of was able to connect a little bit better. She was also like young, freshly graduated out of her master's, I believe. And then I just kind of told her what I was struggling with and why I wanted an evaluation. She's like, okay. And then after that, it took about, I want to say 3 or 4 months until they could actually see me for an evaluation, because at the time, COVID was still backing up waiting times, and it's very difficult to get in with a psychiatrist, in my opinion, because they have so many other appointments, so many other people to see, and they have very limited time. So when I finally went in for my evaluation, I was extremely nervous, I think, as anyone would be, because they're not only interviewing you and asking you questions, but they're specifically watching you for body language and specific signals that they think might be indicators of autism or anything else. So it started off, I think, with about 100 question test of where it asked me different questions about if I strongly disagreed or strongly agreed, and then kind of a range in between of specific things. Like, I think one of them was, do you find yourself easily connecting to other people? Or, I don't know, it was like a series of questions where it said, I blank, 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 and you would agree or disagree with it. And then after that, they have you do an IQ test, which I guess is just mandatory. But oh my god.
That's dumb.
They would time you as you do puzzles, like, or specific, different types of puzzles. I can't really recall at the moment the specific ones. And if you mess up, they're like, no, leave it how you had it. And you're like, okay, I guess. They found that my IQ was below average, so that was very humbling. And I mean, I talked to other people after this, and they thought it was kind of skewed because apparently IQ tests are supposed to like be much more varied, and mine was specifically on, my gosh, I think like memory questions and things with numbers. I'm sorry, I'm really not good at giving the details of this.
That's totally
This
fair.
happened like 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then she was kind of interviewing me one-on-one. She was just asking me questions about my life and was I interested in, could I see myself in a romantic relationship and what I would want out of that? And my idea of having fun with friends and just a whole slew of questions. And then, which after that, I think it took another month of, they wrote up a written report, which is it's like, I want to say like 15 pages long, and it's kind of them just roasting me the whole time. I remember the first paragraph was, Miss Bowl came in with a very stiff body posture and really avoided eye contact with the interviewer. Her hygiene was acceptable, or something like that. It's really silly. But you actually use those papers if you ever need to file for disability with the university, for example. Disability services, they have to see your diagnoses report. So you get to enjoy that. But yeah, it's kind of, without going into like an hour-long spiel, like a basic kind of overview of what I was experiencing, why I went to go get diagnosed, how I got diagnosed. I mean, after the appointment after the actual evaluation is really just a follow-up where they tell you, yes, I think you're autistic. These are resources that you can get in touch with if you would like to, and this is what you can do with this diagnosis, essentially. So, yeah.
Would you like to go?
Yeah. So I do not have a formal diagnosis. I just remember that I was spending a lot of time, especially during like quarantine. At the beginning of quarantine, I remember we all moved up to online classes, and I was really struggling. And I remember thinking, like, why is it like I'm learning the exact same things? It shouldn't be hard. And I at first was like, I think I'm ADHD, and had tried to look into the process of getting diagnosed for that, and then lost my insurance, whole thing. So I'm not diagnosed for either. But through learning about trying to see if I was ADHD, I realized that there's a lot of overlap between ADHD and autism, and that I actually fit more with the traits and whatnot that are associated with autism, and just went into a really deep dive on every single thing that could be possibly autistic that I've ever done. I mean, I remember looking into it and seeing that it presents differently in women, and looking at how, because I was the same thing as you. It's well, I can't be autistic. I'm not what the media presents or what I've been told autism looks like, so I can't be autistic. But looking at how it presents differently in women, I was oh, a lot of those things I resonate with. And I'm even some of the typical things with autism, I mean, for the first 10 years of my life, my parents like to make jokes. I would only eat mac and cheese.
Period.
It's so good. But we'd go out to restaurants and it'd be I want mac and cheese, and they'd be well, this is a Mexican restaurant, so they don't have that. What would you like? Oh, chicken nuggets. Well, they don't have that either. And three things that I only ever wanted to eat, and that I remember crying being told to try new foods, or looking at something and being that looks like it feels weird, and I'm not gonna find out if it is,
Right.
because I'm not gonna be happy when it feels weird, and I can tell by looking at that thing that I'm not gonna like it. And just little things like that I remember I never would have thought about if I hadn't even thought about if I was autistic. I was just oh, I'm just a picky eater, or I mean, nobody likes how that fabric feels. It makes everybody's skin crawl to touch that. Oh, no, it doesn't. Okay. Just things like that, and going through and I'd taken a lot of online tests and looked into the I think it's DSM. Yes.
Yeah.
The criteria for that type of thing,
Right.
and just basically doing a whole bunch of research and just enough to make myself feel confident in the fact that if that is, that I'm not going crazy by noticing all these things about myself, that there are other people who also experience these things, and those people are autistic, and that that's okay.
Okay. I also don't have an official diagnosis. So I had been going to therapy and going to a psychiatrist and doing all that stuff ever since I was middle school. Just because I just needed it, and then going to a therapist, going to a psychiatrist and all that. I was diagnosed with the the normal anxiety, depression, that stuff, whatever. So I've always just been going to therapy and getting meds and whatever, just for those things specifically. No one had ever picked up on anything else really. So recently, literally just this semester, towards the beginning of at the beginning of the semester, I decided to try going back to therapy. So I tried campus counseling, and so I got paired up with this person. I won't say their name or anything, but best person in the world, the most lovely human ever. I love them so much. But I don't know how many sessions we were in. It was a good little handful of sessions in, and we were talking about something, and I guess something we were talking about kind of sparked something in their brain to think that I was maybe autistic, and so they kind of started asking me some questions that seemed more curated. I didn't really know what they were getting at, but they're asking me questions, whatever, and I was answering them, and we were kind of talking about them. And then after a little bit, they asked me kind of one more question, and they had their little pen and notepad and everything, and they asked me the one last question, and I answered it, and they set it down and kind of leaned forward, and word for word, I can still hear it in my brain, word for word, they were babe, it sounds like autism. And I was what? What? And I was okay. So it was kind of a little bit shocking, I guess, but also a little bit not, because I had come across autism TikTok and stuff, and seen the videos and whatever, and I'd always thought me as well. But back then I didn't know how acceptable it was to self-diagnose and whatever, because I had always seen stuff about all these other mental illnesses and being but don't self-diagnose, don't whatever, so I was kind of one of the people who was more so against self-diagnose, whatever, because I wasn't educated on it, I guess. And so every time I saw those videos and every time I related to one, I was maybe, but I'm not gonna ponder on it, I'm not gonna self-diagnose, I'm not gonna whatever. So I just kind of dismiss it, I guess. And then my therapist brought this to my attention, and I was huh, okay. So I kind of pondered on it myself there for a little bit, and then I finally told my mom about it, and she was also kind of what at first? I don't know. But then we had a conversation about it, and as the conversation was going, she was just kind of yeah, never mind, yeah. Because then she started telling me about stuff as a kid that she would kind of pick up on, because she worked in ECI for a long time, and she's a caseworker for adolescent boys right now. But back in ECI, she'd have to work with autistic kids all the time. That was a major part of her job, was to do that. And she was I worked with these kids 24/7. How did I not see it in you? And I was I don't know. But she was now thinking back on all the stuff you would do when you were little, it makes a lot of sense. And the stuff even now, just living with me and stuff, she saw whatever. So I was okay. So then I did research, and I started diving into it and whatever, and I was okay, yeah, I guess so. But yeah, so nothing huge or whatever. It's literally just my therapist being girl, I think you're autistic. And I was oh, okay. But yeah.
I get that.
Yeah.
That's how I felt as well, with the, so my boyfriend has ADHD, and I mentioned that I was I thought I had ADHD, and he told his family, and they went, yeah, we thought you were normal, and then we kept seeing you, and we went, they do a lot of the same things. And so that was with ADHD, and then I kept looking into it and realized, first of all, there's a lot of overlap between ADHD and autism, and then there's a lot of things that I have that are not ADHD, that are just symptoms of autism. I don't traits. I'm not sure which word to use.
Yeah, I know. One of my friends, when I told her, she's been my best friend for a good few years now. She was like, yeah, I always kind of wondered, blah, and I was like, what? You couldn't have told me that? But yeah, it's also weird because my best friend, ever since we were like my best friend from like little kid, he found out that he was autistic kind of like late in the game also. He started putting the pieces together like kind of at the end of our high school like time, and but we were like very similar and we got along very well. Like we were like two peas in a pod, and so I should have been like and then when I figured out and I told him, he was like, oh, welcome. He was like, yeah, and I was like, damn.
I don't know what the exact statistic is, but for women specifically, they usually don't get diagnosed until adulthood, up to late adulthood.
Yeah.
I mean, I was reading about lots of stories of women who found relief through the fact they could finally get a diagnosis or get validation or affirmation of, yes, I am different, and it's not just, you know, a figment of my imagination, or I'm not just, you know, being paranoid. And some of these women were like in their 50s, so.
Well, I think it's interesting, especially when it comes to like women with autism, like when they're little girls, a lot of the things that are traits of like an autistic girl are just seen as like, that's just the chatty girl or the bookish girl or the girl who really likes horses.
I was going to say the horse girl.
I am fairly certain at least half of the horse girls growing up.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Something I thought about asking you guys is, especially as people who like realize later on in life that they were autistic, how have you, if you have been, how has your experience with unmasking been?
That was the point that I had written down. I was like, how's your life change after finding out or whatever?
Really, because you've been wearing a mask your whole life,
Yeah.
and then once you realize it's a mask, you take it off and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, there are points where I'm like, oh, I don't even know who I am sometimes because I've been lying about who I am to myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think support centers for autistic adults is so important because it's available for kids and there's a lot of help for autistic children, but there has to be some sort of transition between autistic children and adulthood. I feel like there's not really a lot of resources out there for adults or a way besides therapy to try to help yourself, especially if you don't get diagnosed until adulthood.
Yeah.
So
I think a lot of the assumptions is that you will be diagnosed in childhood, and by the time of adulthood, you'll have like mechanisms in place to be able to be an adult with autism.
Right.
But I don't think that's quite how it works, especially for women who don't get diagnosed until later in life.
Right. I know. I think like since finding, like when I first found out, I guess whatever, it was kind of weird at first because I was kind of like rethinking everything, and I kind of felt like weird about it almost negatively, like not negatively, but like, oh, like, like I'm, you know, whatever. And, but I kind of like talked to my mom about it and I talked to my therapist about it, and they were both like, and like I did realize this, but I was still kind of struggling with like the negatives of it, but they were like, this could be a very positive thing. And I see that now because it's like now I can, like actively sought out like ways to help myself, you know, like ways to deal with things, and it's not just me being like, oh, well, I'm just weird about like this thing, or oh, this is just something that I'm being a baby about, or oh, I'm just dumb, or you know, whatever. I have ways to be like, no, that's not the case. I just need to go about this in a different way than other people, and like that's fine, like whatever. So I think it's been beneficial to learn and to know, and now have like ways to like help myself and stuff.
Sorry, I just have to keep thinking of things as we talk. If you guys have questions, go ahead and
Yeah.
Have you guys experienced anything where you think since realizing you're autistic, and through the process of unmasking, that people see you differently?
Do you want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
For me, the journey of unmasking has been really difficult. I think a lot of times whenever I'm in any sort of social situation, I'm often masking rather than being myself. That sounds kind of corny to say, but I think it's definitely true for autistic people because a lot of times for me at least, I feel like I'm wearing many different faces and I definitely mimic other people's behaviors, and I feel like a lot of times my own behavior is a culmination of other people's personality traits that I have picked up on and kind of cherry picked and tailored to be what I perceive to be a likable person or a normal person, quote unquote. Even though there's not anything wrong with me and I know that, but I mean, I can't help but want to be accepted, which I think is a common human experience. So, I mean, for myself, I just constantly just trying to tell myself it's okay to not always have something to say, or it's okay to not always go to every function, you know, if I just need alone time or I don't have the energy to try to keep up with neurotypical people.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly valid. I feel the exact same way with like the whole masking and trying to like, because all my life I just thought like kind of how you were talking about, like I just thought I was like socially awkward or like, and I don't always feel that way. It just depends on like the situation and the people and whatever. But a lot of the times it's like, who am I gonna be today? How do I act around that? I feel like I'm always like, even if I don't realize it, I feel like in any situation, social situation, unless I'm like so comfortable with that person, and even still sometimes happens, I feel like I am like meticulously like trying to map out how to be and how to talk and what to say and who to be, like even just like who to be. It's like which part of me, which feels weird because then it's like, we were talking about this the other day, because it's like you mask for so many different situations and so many different people, and you're like constantly masking that once you're not, it's like, well, who am I? Or once something that I was having a conversation with some people about the other day is like, when you meet a new person, it's always so like weird and kind of hard because you don't know who they are yet, so you don't know how you need to be, and so you're trying to be like a mix of all of them, but then it feels like you're not really you. I feel like after I meet new people, I'm like, well, that was not good, because I'm like, I didn't know how to be, you know? But yeah, I think, yeah, that's something that I also like, yeah.
I just noticed there's been some times where I subconsciously was unmasking, like I got comfortable and I noticed neurotypical people that I've hung out with or been in conversations with, that they have reacted differently to me, or like side glances at each other, like looks of like, oh, is she gonna stop talking, things like that, or like I say something and there's a reaction and I'm like, I know that there's a reaction there, but I'm not sure why. And then like every time that happens, it's like, oh, mask.
Yeah.
I think part of that as well is, I mean, either without trying to or not, subconsciously, I think people tend to infantilize people who share that they are autistic, or not even just people who have shared that they have autism or a mental disability of some kind. I mean, neurotypical people are very good at picking up on social cues, and so if they notice something abnormal within someone else within their circle, they're going to send body language signals or shared glances with someone else in the room, and they think that that person won't be able to pick up on it, but I mean, we very much can. And I think that's just a little bit dehumanizing, but it's just something that you have to face.
Yeah. Luckily for me, I think, I don't think anyone's treated me like really differently. I think, cause I don't know, I feel like I mask a lot, but I feel like also if I get comfortable with people, I'll just like do whatever and like be however. And so I feel like a lot of my like close friends who I like actually like, the people who I actually do care about their opinion and the people who I actually do value and like have in my life, I feel like they've all been very like, okay about it, like it doesn't really change anything. Or if it does change anything, it's like for the better almost. Like they've been very, I don't want to be like supportive. It's not like something I'm like doing like actively. I'm like, I'm gonna be autistic now. It's not like that. It's like they're I don't know, you know, like they've just been good. They haven't made it be like a weird thing, or they haven't felt like they need to tiptoe, which is good because I'm not like, nothing's changed, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's just,
Yeah, I think infantilize is the wrong word. I mean, don't get me wrong, autistic people definitely get infantilized, but I think more of a side effect of what I would say for me when I unmask is being ostracized, and so the fear of that keeps me from comfortably unmasking. Although I have had some good experiences, like with Caitlin, I think I feel just so much more free when we're just like being really kind of like, I don't want to call it goofy, but you know, like vocal stimming around each other or just making sounds because we're free to do that without feeling like we're going to be punished for it.
Yeah, so. It's been really nice to have people who, like my neurotypical friends who are like loving about it and like whatever, like that's great, but it's been great to have people who like have the same experience, lived through the same stuff, like are wired basically the same way. Like it's really nice to have that and to have someone to talk to about that within Savannah and my other neurotypical or non-neurotypical friends and all that. It's been nice.
Well, it's something that I think can be hard for some people to understand, is that neurotypical people can be very supportive and can be like not be doing anything wrong necessarily, but there's just a sense of comfort, I think, when around people who are also neurodivergent, because you don't feel the need to behave like the neurotypical person, even if that neurotypical person doesn't put that standard on you. And just having people who have that same experience and being able to live the way that you like are meant to with that person at the same time is something that's really like beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, this isn't the same for every autistic person, but for myself, I noticed I have a really, like, what I consider to be a special relationship with music in particular. Not in, like, singing or composing, I just mean in listening and feeling the music. It's, like, was really strong even since I was, like baby. And especially with, like, classical or just instrumental, I would get really just, immersed in it. And, I don't know, there's something very special to me about music. And I had apparently talked to, I think maybe my therapist, that was like, yeah, that's actually common with neurodivergent people. But I just thought it was a cool little tidbit.
I think that's something I also relate to. Music is like a huge part of like the little things I like. I get like very hyper fixated on like certain songs or certain bands for a amount of time, and then I will only like, not only, but like I'll get in the car and I'll immediately play like that one song I'm hyper fixated on at the moment. And I know that's like a big one of those little like niche autistic traits where it's like listening to the same song over and over again. And like repetition and stuff. I do that with like bands and music and whatever. But yeah,
That's only been a recent experience for me. Well, so I grew up very religious, and so I wasn't allowed to listen to anything but Christian music until I was 15, and I just never hyperfixated on Christian music. So for me, it was more art, like anything along those lines. But I'm pretty sure I like drew a left eyeball like a million times in notebooks. Always the same. Like I did not draw both, and I'm pretty sure it was always. Like when you look at someone, like your right one, but like my left.
Yeah.
And just over and over again.
I used to have like my like preferred doodles that I would always do too. Yeah.
And I want to clarify, like, these aren't necessarily experiences that neurotypicals can't have.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of people argue, well, everyone feels that. That's an experience everyone has. Yes, but it is so much stronger in people that are neurodivergent, and I think that's something that's hard for people who are not within that community to understand.
And it's also, it's not the same, because it's usually something that's like somebody who's neurotypical who really likes music, like could spend a lot of their time listening to music, but like that is something that like, this might sound weird, but like that they just happen to be interested in that, and like be like, there's the way that your brain goes about it when you're neurodivergent is just very different. It's like, it's not like, oh, I like this song, I'm gonna play it. It's, oh, I like this song and I need to hear this part right now, or I'm going to feel unsteady, and like,
it's like you crave it, and it's like because it makes your brain feel nice.
It gives you that dopamine and serotonin.
For me especially, I noticed, because at first I thought that stimming could only be like the stereotypical ones that I've been taught, like hand flapping, for example. But for me, a big one is dancing, actually. And so, like when I hear music, I just get I just get so excited by it that I have to do some sort of like movement to it. And it's not like the typical like club dancing or like choreographed like ballerina type. It's just something in a way that I express myself and release tension, and it's a great outlet for me.
Stimming specifically, I think is something that I think really needs to be a lot more destigmatized, because the more like bigger forms of stimming, I feel like a lot of people would just be like, okay, what was that? Like about, But like that's someone like if it's like a joyful one, like that's someone expressing their joy just in the way you would like laugh if something was funny, or the way you would like, I don't know, smile if something was like made you happy. Like it's the same thing. People just feel it. People with autism just feel it like more sometimes, and they just can't like keep all that energy in, so they let it out. And I feel like that's such a beautiful thing. Like if someone's happy, let them be happy. And but yeah, I always thought stimming, the only thing I'd heard about was just like, you know, like the really big and more like well-known things. And so whenever that day that my therapist was like, sounds like autism to me, she was like asking me some questions, and she was like, do you stim? And I was like, oh no, like I don't think so, because that's all I knew about it. And she looked down at my hands, and I was like playing with putty that one day, because like I always like I have my little things. I like to have stuff in my hands, and I like to be able to feel things in my hand and whatever. And I was like doing that, and she went like she looked like directly at my hands, and I was like, oh.
Yeah.
And she was like, do you do this? Do you do that? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, those are like stems. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
And now, like in my day-to-day life, I realize all the like stems I'm doing, and I'm like, huh, interesting.
Yeah.
Like things even as little as like teeth grinding or whatever. And I feel like now I'm kind of letting myself do it more, like, because that's something my therapist told me, was like, let it happen. Like if you feel the need to do something, like do it. And so now I'm kind of letting it happen more, and it's, I don't know, it's just kind of more nice, because it's like, oh, this is something that I'm like, this is okay to do.
Yeah. I shake a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and I've heard that like trying to resist stimming can also like have things like that, where you like, I've especially in points where I'm like really stressed and I'm trying to like mask really hard. I've had moments where like I twitch and I just like my body just goes, nope, you have to do that.
Yeah.
And so like I just always like knee shakes and whatnot, like restless leg syndrome. But I hadn't even thought about it, but I like until I was looking into the diagnosis and whatnot. But just like since I was little, I get very overstimulated if there's a lot of things on my hand very quickly. I'm trying to get used to an engagement ring so that I don't try and take it off every 5 minutes.
To this.
Yeah, I have to train myself to like anything. Like I like this scrunchie is a miracle that it stays.
Mm-hmm.
But like I find that I like do a semicircle.
Yep.
On my fingers, and I've done that for years. And like I'll just like switch and things like that. And I've been doing it the whole time we've been here. But just little subtle things that I like never would have thought were stimming, because I was like, oh no, I just like doing things with my fingers. Sometimes I can't sit still. That's normal.
Yeah.
Who can sit perfectly still?
The finger thing made me think about this, but I do a lot I still have some of the impulses. I do this like hand ritual thing where I squeeze all my fingers in a very specific way over and over again. And I used to have a lot of things like that, and we always thought, we meaning just like me and my mom and my therapist in the past, always thought it was OCD related, and it very well could be also that, because my dad has pretty bad OCD, so we think that's where I get a lot of things from, and so we thought I had like anxiety-induced OCD. And so for a while I was going to neurofeedback for it. And if you don't know what neurofeedback is, it's where you get your brain like hooked up to these little like things, not like your actual brain, it just sits on your head, and you for me it was like playing little games. You can also like watch movies and stuff during it, but it's it like tracks your brain waves, and you have to like kind of like force yourself to calm down and force yourself to have an easy like thought pattern, easy breath pattern, easy everything. And then like the little Pac-Man will like go, and if you like get out of that, it'll like stop, and you have to get back into that and whatever. And so neurofeedback is used a lot for like OCD impulses and stuff like that. And so I went to that for a while to try to like fix those things, and now I'm realizing that a lot of that could have just been like stemming or sensory things that I needed, or whatever, because a lot of things that I thought were OCD related was like body feeling. Like if someone high-fived me on one hand, I'd have to be like, this is going to sound so weird, but can you please do it on this hand too, because I feel uncentered, I feel unbalanced, I feel not right now, and it's going to make me freak out.
Do you chew equally on both sides?
Yeah, usually.
Yeah.
But yeah, so all these little things, it's crazy. Like after being told like, hey, I think you're autistic by someone, then you start to realize like, oh, all these crazy things that you would have never thought of could be related to that.
Yeah. For those that don't know, stimming can be a form of self-soothing, and it can bring you comfort, because for autistic people especially, anything in everyday life that might be tolerable to a neurotypical person can be a trigger for us that will build up to us being overstimulated and could even lead to like a breakdown. And I do want to clarify as well, like a breakdown can not only fall under what you see in like the movies of an autistic person just falling to the floor and like rocking back and forth. That's not gonna present itself like that for everyone. Sure, it could for some people, but I mean, it varies. So
it can present similar to panic attacks for some people who have experienced those, but it is slightly different still.
Yeah, I mean, for me, a stim that helps me when I'm feeling really anxious, maybe when I'm taking a test and getting really overstimulated and in my head, I like to like mess with the tip of my nose, which is really unfortunate because from certain angles it will look like I'm picking my nose, and I'm not because my fingers never even touch my nostrils, but I just like to mess with like my nose.
Me with my nose ring, I'm always like
yeah, or like my lips. I mean, so it can be like tiny little everyday things that just helps me regulate myself and self-soothe until I'm in a state of being able to function again.
Yeah. I had a little topic to talk about that I thought was kind of interesting, especially since we are 3 women, or at least female presenting, whatever, she, theys. Okay, so I saw this TikTok not too long ago, and I thought it was interesting. I'm just going to read some of what it says. So it says, when you are an attractive woman with autism, men will excuse the strange, bad timing, intense things you say just because you're beautiful. I genuinely want someone to look into this more. I know if I wasn't beautiful, men and honestly even women would find me off-putting and odd. Because of my beauty, they find me to be cool and goofy. And I think that's really interesting and something to think about. I also saw, I can't find it for the life of me. I don't know if it was on TikTok or Instagram, but it was something talking about how people like to obsess about autistic figures, mostly being female in the media, like Wednesday Addams,
Jessica Day.
Yeah, that
an example. Yeah.
Whatever that guy's name was from Stranger Things, Freddie or what is his? I don't know. What's his name?
Wait, which one? Who did he play?
The guy, like
the
like rock guy.
Oh,
Eddie. Yeah, or characters like Eddie Munson, Wednesday Addams, like them, like they like to like obsess over them because they like the like concept of it, but then when it comes to the actual people, a lot of times they're just like, you're being weird, like stop being weird, like whatever. I thought that would be an interesting thing to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. I think the manic pixie dream girl trope in a lot of movies is actually autistic women that men see through rose-colored glasses and romanticize the idea of, because, oh, she's so quirky, she's not like other girls. No, she is literally not like other girls, and it's because she has mental disability.
Yeah, and it's like they don't, like, once the, like, pretty side fades and it, like, there's the other things that aren't so pretty when it comes to autism, like the harder side of it, I guess. I feel like, they wouldn't be so, like, about, then they'd be like, oh, never mind.
Well, you don't see autistic shutdowns or meltdowns on television because those aren't
pretty
or marketable, and like because then you have characters like Wednesday where even if like somebody who like if thinking she's autistic, someone who might think they're autistic could relate to her, but then people who are not could just like see her as a figure to like have, I don't know how to, like just somebody to talk about and like point out things, like to like people like to notice things about people, and so if they're like looking for autism, they're gonna like pinpoint things, but they're gonna want to look for the things that they like.
Right, exactly, because it's like as soon as it's not cool, then it's weird, or as soon as it's not like a cool person doing it or a conventionally pretty person doing it, then like it's weird. Right. And I feel like that's like really fucked up because it's like
I've seen that same video on my feed. I definitely think you could put two like women, for example, of varying standard beauty levels and have them do the exact same thing in a room and get different results. Yeah. Because the person who is less conventionally attractive, they're gonna go, she's really weird. Like, why is she doing that? Like, that's not normal. And then the conventionally attractive person is like, wow, she's really interesting. Like, she does things outside the box, and she like is really like goofy and fun.
Right. Yeah. I've heard from autistic women whose experience pretty privilege per se, say that they are perceived as just quirky, or they have fun little traits that on someone who maybe does not experience that pretty privilege would get ostracized for, and are like demonized for those same behaviors.
I know, and I think that's something that, like we were talking about destigmatizing and stuff, I think that's something that really needs to be destigmatized. I don't know if that's the right word to use for this. But, because it's like acceptance shouldn't be like a pick and choose thing.
No.
Like, I thought that's,
Yeah, and I definitely think something like that I don't think a lot of people understand is anyone could have autism, and it can present differently. So, like, it is a spectrum.
yeah.
There are varying like ways to look at autism, and somebody who you look at and like, well, they just are really smart, and there's a couple things that they're more interested in. Like, that's not neurodivergent. That's just how some people are. It's like, well, that person might actually be autistic, but just because they function better, or they're able to look people in the eyes while talking, or make it look like they are, because that's another thing, is are you actually making eye contact, or it's like autism doesn't always look the way you think it does,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have to look that way to be accepted or to be understood. There, we should try and understand all forms of autism.
Yeah, I think that's a horrible thing that people kind of, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but when people are like, oh, but you don't look autistic or whatever, it's like, you don't have to look autistic. Like, a lot of your, like, well, not a lot, but like, probably some of your like favorite people in like the media or like celebrities are autistic. Some of the people who brought you some of the greatest inventions or greatest film and television, greatest music, were autistic.
Yeah.
Like, look it up. Look up autistic celebrities or autistic famous people or whatever. There's so many people. So if you appreciate them just because they're like cool or they did something great or whatever, then, you know, appreciate and respect the person in your class who might need different things than you do. Different, like, accessible, or different, what is the word I'm trying to say? Different
Resources?
or,
Yeah.
you know, whatever. Like, treat them the same. Because if, like, what's the difference, you know?
Yeah. Building on that, I wanted to mention, I think it's relevant to talk about the terms high functioning versus low functioning, and how that's not really considered an acceptable way to describe someone who has autism, because the terms high functioning and low functioning, it implies that someone has more value in society than another, and really the terms we should be using is low support needs versus higher support needs, because sometimes people just need a little more support in order to be able to function in a neurotypical society that does not cater to neurodivergent individuals.
Yeah, and that's something that, like, I didn't even know about until Savannah told me one day about that. So, yeah, I think that's a good thing to, like, educate people on. And it's not even, like, if you're saying it, that's not, like, a bad thing. Like, if you don't know, you don't know. Just be, like, educated.
Yeah.
I think that's a thing that is something that also needs to be destigmatized, is the idea of asking questions and trying to learn about things. And, like, I think honestly right now, with as much growth as a lot of like communities, like with like neurodivergence and everything are going through right now, if you are ever unsure whether or not a label is the correct one to use, the best thing to do is to ask.
Yeah.
Or if you're like, hey, like, I was told this is what I was supposed to say, is that still good? Because I mean, at this point, we don't use the term Asperger's because that is considered offensive. And I mean, if you know the history of where that term came from, you would never say that somebody has that. And like, then the thing that came after that was calling people who used to have a diagnosis of Asperger's high functioning, and now we're not doing that anymore. So labels and ideas and criteria and whatnot are always actively changing. So the best thing to do is to be actively trying to learn and keep yourself updated. And if you're ever wrong, to just accept that, and that it's okay to be wrong occasionally, and that you're not doing anything like bad.
Yeah,
and
and it's
it's
okay
gonna
to
be
learn.
like, you're wrong. Or whatever.
I think even in the medical world, it's also trying to become more
Inclusive?
I don't know what to, but they're changing their terminology is what I'm trying to say. Like on my official report, I'm classified as a low support need individual rather than high functioning individual, because it's just it's more appropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys.
I feel like I had,
He's like,
I had something else, but I can't remember it.
Just a little thing that I thought of when you mentioned the you don't look autistic. I saw this thing. It was like, if someone ever tells you you don't look autistic, that you should just say, "Oh, do I smell autistic?" To tell them, show them how ridiculous an idea of like you look autistic is.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's a joke, but it's also just kind of like, it's a mental disability. There's no way to see it.
right.
So to say like, the idea of smelling a disability is just as ridiculous as seeing an invisible disability. So
Right.
that's just something like I thought I'd bring up.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I remember what I was gonna say. So whenever Savannah was talking about like just ask questions, like whatever, I felt most like accepted when people ask me questions and want to hear more about it and want to hear about my experiences, and that feels so great. And like it was a fun little time at KC. That was something like going to KC, the festival, spending like a week in a hotel, like all that. That was something that I was really kind of like nervous about because it's a lot of uncertainty. I'd never been to KC before, and like not knowing how everything is going to go at all times can be really hard for people with autism.
Change of routine.
And, yeah. And being in a new space, not in my space, sharing a room with 3 other people for a week and not having my like alone time. Like there was just a lot of aspects that I was very nervous about for Casey. And so as one does, I packed quite a few like sensory toys just in case I needed something fun and nice to just like kind of ground myself in whatever. And so when we were in the hotel room, I was sharing a hotel with Carly and Kendall and Nolan. Nolan is also part of OSBS. And we were kind of like talking about it at one point, and they were all just like asking questions, and it became a conversation, and it was really nice. And then one of the reasons why we started talking about it is because I had my little sensory toys just kind of like out, whatever, and they kept asking to like play with them, and they wanted to see them, and they wanted to use them, and they really liked them. And I was like, oh, this is fun. And then later on, like Sawyer came into the room, and like RJ and whoever, and it, like the whole room just wanted to like see all the toys and like play with all the stuff, and so we were all just like like having a fun little time, and I was like, this is nice, this feels good, like being accepted and making it not like a tiptoe around me thing or like
Right.
a whatever. It just felt like fun and nice and like open space, brave space. It felt, yeah, it was good. I think yeah.
And the best part is, I bet a bunch of them didn't even like actively think about it, but like the difference between like someone pulling out sensory toys and being like, why do you need that many like
Yeah.
things, or versus just the like, whoa, can I borrow some? Like, is that okay? Like, can I play with some?
Yeah,
Like,
a lot of them told me like they wanted it, and then Kendall got herself one of the little slugs because
Oh
I
my
had
God.
one of those, and I brought it. Or no, I didn't have one. I have one at my house, but I found one. I found a mini one at one of the gas stations we stopped at, and so I got it, and I was like, oh my god, I have one of these in my house. And Kendall was like, can I see it? And I was like, yeah, and she got really like fond of it, and so she got one herself on the way back. And yeah, I just think that's so fun. It's like, it's not a weird thing. It's just a different thing, and I don't think different is bad.
Yeah.
different is never bad.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people assume that asking questions is overbearing or somehow rude to that individual, but if anything, I think it makes us feel more accepted because it shows that you care enough to learn more, to try to, just have me as a part of your everyday life. So I just think that learning more and being educated is never a bad thing, and I wouldn't be hesitant to ask questions.
No. Especially like when you're coming from a place of like, I want to learn and I want to be able to better like accept you and like remove any prejudices that I might not have realized I had. Like just that, like, it is very obvious when someone comes to you and asks questions from a, why are you being weird, versus a, hey, like, what's going on? Like, can I participate as well, or can I learn from this? Like they feel different, and when someone comes from it from a good place, it is never offensive, really.
Yeah, it's just nice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I kind of wanted to touch on just sometimes, not with every autistic person obviously, but for me, something that I struggle with sometimes is selective mutism. So there's times where I want to be completely nonverbal, but that doesn't mean I don't want to be included in spaces.
Right.
So I mean, it just kind of, I think it would make anyone feel left out if, people assume that you don't want to come to something just because you don't necessarily are always super involved or always like really talkative. Sometimes I just want to sit and enjoy company, but I don't have it in me to speak. But I'll be engaged, I'll be participating silently. And I think that should be more normalized.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important because I feel the same way. I get very like sometimes after, well, not sometimes, like also after a while, I just like can't handle it anymore. It being like everything, so I just need to be like completely alone in my room or whatever. But I'll like sometimes it's not that bad, and sometimes I just want to like hang out, but it's not like I don't want it to be like a big thing. Like I just want like to exist around like other people and it be like nice but like calm and whatever. And it's like if y'all want to go be crazy, like that's fine. I'll be there too. I'll just be like whatever.
Right.
So I think that's very valid and I understand where you're coming from.
Because sometimes I just want to maybe listen to music, or sometimes I'll even be on my phone, and it'll sometimes I think come off as rude, or like I'm not paying attention, or I'm disengaged, or I don't care about what's going on. But it's really just my own way of connecting with everyone in a way that I can still maintain my levels without being overstimulated.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a lot of moments where I like just like the selective mutism. And I found that like when that happens, and sometimes I'm in a situation where I still have to be able to communicate, that I often like get very overstimulated quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, cause if I'm sitting there and I'm like someone's like asking me a bunch of questions and I'm just like, and like I'm like thinking about like, okay, I should answer. And sometimes I'm just sitting there like,
Yeah.
and nothing is happening, and then they get frustrated because I'm not answering, or they get frustrated because I say one or two words because that's all I can get out, because there's sometimes where I physically cannot speak.
Right.
And like I find that I have that a lot in the mornings where I just wake up and I'm like,
Yeah.
nothing will be happening here. I will not be speaking for at least 3 hours.
Right.
Yeah. What you said made me think of two things. Number one, I think this relates a lot back to like the whole like just communicating, like asking questions, whatever. Not necessarily asking, but like just being open-minded about it, because a lot of times I will have to tell some of my friends like, can you please stop? I'm just like not trying to be rude. I'm just overstimulated right now. Or even like with my mom, like I'm not, like sometimes I can be very touchy. Like I have friends that are very, very touchy with me, and I respect that, and I like will tell myself like I'm okay with this right now, like that's okay. But sometimes I'm not. Like with my mom, she's a very like loving person, but I'm not sometimes I just don't want to be a super touchy type loving person, and so she just kind of has to understand that like I don't always want to hug, I don't always want to like whatever. And or like even if you're in a situation where something is like too loud or too much or whatever, and like asking like, hey, I'm overstimulated, can we please like whatever, like I think that doesn't need to be taken as like a bad thing. Like I'm not telling you like, ew, don't touch me, or like, God, your music is too loud or whatever. It's just I'm saying like, hey, I'm not feeling too great right now, could we please fix this? And I think a lot of people it'd be easier if other people understood that like I'm not trying to be rude, I'm not trying to damper the situation, I'm not trying to tell you that I don't love you or whatever. It's just I'm overstimulated right now, and can we not? And it's not a bad thing. I'm just saying what I need or whatever.
I've had a lot of struggles with that as well. I can get very overstimulated with touch, and there's sometimes where like if I didn't realize that I was overstimulated yet, like where someone touches me and my immediate reaction is just like, and then they're like, why did it mean? And it's like, you could not have controlled that happened to me, and I had no control over that, and neither of us are like, you're not in trouble because of that. And I'm not looking to be like in trouble either. Like it's just a reaction. I think it's like no more touch right now. But
I'm not like mad at you or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. And like just because sometimes there are physical reactions that can happen when you're like overstimulated, and like I know a lot of neurotypical people can sometimes take those personally. Like if like something's really loud and you're like, or you just kind of like look away, or really anything can be sometimes misinterpreted, and it's kind of disheartening when that happens, because you're already overstimulated and then you get a negative reaction.
Even the smallest things as like eye contact. One time, so like conversation can already be a really intense thing for autistic people, just because like the whole masking thing and trying to figure out how to be and how to act, and am I standing weird, am I talking weird, whatever. But then eye contact comes into play. And eye contact can be very hard for people with autism. And one time I was talking to one of my coworkers. We were just like in the back in the kitchen, and I was talking, and I didn't realize it, but apparently I was talking to her, but I was looking kind of like right up aside and above her, and she was like, "Why you never look at me like when you're talking to me? Like you never whatever." And I was like, "I don't mean to. I don't mean to do that." And I feel like that can be taken as rude, but like we don't mean it that way. And another thing, that same coworker, she doesn't mean anything bad, but she told me one time that I never sound interested in like the conversation, just because a lot of times whenever I talk, I go very monotone, and I don't mean to, and I don't really realize I'm doing that. But other people pick up on that, and they're like, I feel like you don't care about the conversation. I'm like, no, I care so much. I just, sometimes when I talk, I just go monotone, and I don't know why that is. I just do sometimes, and I've seen other people with autism talk about that.
Yeah, unique voice inflection is also very much like an indicator of someone who is autistic. That's noted on my diagnosis form. Is apparently throughout the entire interview I spoke very monotone, like very flat. And it's not always necessarily monotone. It can be someone who has a unique tone to their voice, or just something that's special about their vocal inflection. And I think it's just because we don't perceive expression in the same way. And so the way that we speak and are trying to just communicate is not going to be the same as a neurotypical person. Touching back on what y'all said about like physical touch, I think touch is such a great conversation for anyone to have with someone that they know is autistic, because for me personally, I seek sensory input through touch. So I like, it always sounds weird when I try to explain this, but I really like seek out people to just like be touching me, or I like to be touched. But it doesn't necessarily mean that I like to touch you. I just want to have like hugs. Or the other day, like one of my friends was just like messing with my kneecap, and I was like going crazy because I have to have some sort of sensory stimulation from people touching me, and it just, I don't know, it brings me comfort. So
I think I feel like I feel similar, but I have gotten so used to doing it myself. Like I will literally just like, if I'm just relaxing, just like do form and I think that having someone else do it, because I'm so unused to it, is what can cause me to be overstimulated. So I think that's so interesting that like you and I could have a similar need, but just, and like we both have autism, but we present it differently, where like you would like it can be someone else who can do that for you, but like if someone else is doing that to me, if I don't, like there's like probably 4 people that like can do that, and like not even all the time. Like there's points where I'm hanging out with my boyfriend and he's like just doing something like this, and I'll just be like, okay, that's enough. And like, cause just suddenly I'm overstimulated, and it's just so interesting that like we have similar experiences, but they can be so different, and that's why questions are so good.
Exactly, because you never know if someone's going to be okay. I mean, it's always good to ask for consent and boundaries anyways, but especially like, I wouldn't assume necessarily just because you know someone is neurodivergent or autistic that they don't want to be touched, because for me, I actually get sad if I'm not touched for a certain period of time, because I need that sort of stimulation in my life.
Yeah, and I feel like with you, if someone says like, I seek out that touch, like, don't just assume that that's all it is though, because a lot of times with people with autism, like it can be the 2 extremes. Oh my god. Sorry, my bad. It can be the 2 extremes, because for me, a lot of times, if I'm not like ready for it, or if I'm not like in the best mind space or whatever, I don't want to be touched, or just in general, I don't want to be touched, and like that's okay. But then other times I'm like, damn, I am touch deprived, and so it's like, it's either or. And so if someone comes up and hugs me and I'm super into it and I'm like, yeah, like whatever, then that's fine. But if later they try to like be super touchy with me, or super like, not even touchy, but sometimes if it's just people are like really close to me or around me, I just feel like I'm like suffocating and I can't handle it. So I'll try to like move away, or ask them if they could please like not, or whatever. And it's like, just because I let you earlier and I'm not letting you now doesn't mean I'm mad at you now. It's just, you know, I just don't want it right now, or whatever. And I feel like that could be a really interesting topic, with like how people with autism, like how they feel with like relationship and with like intimacy and stuff, because I kind of struggle a lot with that, because it's just like always up in the air how I'm going to feel at that specific time. And so like intimacy and like relationship, or even just like friendship, like it can be very like hard.
I have seen that there is a lot of research that specifically like autistic women can have a hard time like being physical, or like maintaining that type of connection with a person in a relationship. It's like the romance is always there, but like the extracurricular activities can sometimes be, because it like for some women, like that could sometimes be very overwhelming.
Yes. Yeah.
And like the idea of it can be overwhelming, not just the action. And so like if just normal physical touch, like I've seen a lot of research that like autistic women specifically can sometimes have that struggle in romantic relationships.
I think there's a stigma as well around autism that people who are autistic can't have romantic relationships or are aromantic, which is very much untrue. Your sexuality and your relationships are entirely separate from your disability. And while some autistic people may be aromantic or asexual, that doesn't apply for all. And I mean, while you may have a different relationship because you need to accommodate your partner's needs, it doesn't mean that they're not wanting and willing to be intimate with you or have a relationship.
Yeah.
And I mean, so relationships are a form of social skill. And social skills just look different in autistic people of any gender or identification.
Right.
So how an autistic person expresses themselves romantically or sexually or just like platonically can be different from a neurotypical person.
Yeah.
And so putting the same standards on even relationships for neurodivergent people can be very harmful too.
Yeah, exactly. That's really interesting to me because for me, like, I used to think that I was just like, I don't know, like, not all there in some way of like connecting with other, like, not like connecting with it. I don't know, but like now I see that it could probably be because of like autism and stuff, because like I'm a very like I need to be by myself, I need to like have my alone time, whatever. And so like the idea of like being in a relationship and like the idea of like moving in with someone or like living with someone in a way that's not just like a roommate, like you are sharing the same bed, like in the same space, like that makes me want to die. Like I don't think I could ever handle that unless I like really grew as a human somehow. It's like because like I just need my own space. I need my safe space. I need my alone space because like being alone is safe for me. Like that's where I'm safe. And so, yeah, I feel like that's really interesting.
I was reading about how it can be actually healthier for especially long-term couples to have 2 separate bedrooms. And that is so, I mean, thought of as like abnormal and strange. But I mean, if you're allowed to have your own space, I mean, and not only to just, you know, have alone time, but also you're allowed to express yourself in terms of decor and not have to worry about infringing on someone else's space. It'll help you preserve the longevity of your relationship. And when I talk to people about this, especially to my parents, they just, I mean, that concept is so foreign to them. And they're like, well, why would you even be married? Or why would you even be together? I can still enjoy my relationship.
Yeah, to me, that makes sense. I'm like, yes, I need my own bed. I need my own place. I need my own whatever. Like, well, that makes sense to me.
It just seems like and maybe this is just an autistic viewpoint, but I think it just makes sense because if there's ever a point where there is tension or anything happening in the relationship, there's a space for both people to be able to go and feel comfortable. And I think that is a thing that neurotypical people don't think about often, is like ways to make themselves feel comfortable because they usually do. While neurodivergent people typically feel uncomfortable in a neurotypical world. So we're always looking for ways to make ourselves feel more comfortable.
Yeah. Interesting.
Very good.
I have done so many deep dives on and like hyperfixating on my own diagnosis and whatnot.
Yeah.
Trying to learn so much about my brain that it doesn't even make sense anymore. Like I've researched everything.
I wanted to say also, I mean, special interest or, you know, hyperfixations can be a part of autism, but people sometimes don't realize that a special interest can be your own autism or can be mental illness.
I've seen posts like that where it's like, if you're on the verge of if you're autistic, you probably wouldn't be watching this video and wondering if you're autistic. Like, so, you know, like how you like seeking out that and like obsessing over that and whatever. It's like, well, if you're doing that, then you probably are.
And also Legos for me.
Oh, I love
Legos. I have a whole shelf in my room dedicated to my Legos.
Okay, this is not necessarily related, but do you guys follow the instructions?
Yeah.
Yes.
If you break the instructions, I am so mad at you.
Yeah.
Some people say they don't follow the pamphlet, and I'm like,
why would they give it to you if it's not meant to be followed? That is so not neurotypical.
Can we talk about some of our like silly little special interests?
Yeah.
I think that'd be fun. Okay, Savannah, I know yours. You go.
I mean, I first want to like just say people's special interest can change. It doesn't have to be like finite. Like when I was little, it was definitely like fairy tales, like books. Legos still is Legos. It's been very strong. It's had a grip on me.
Yeah.
And
So cool.
for a while, it's been frogs and what was I just thinking of?
And mushrooms.
Yes. And I know that sounds almost very trendy to say because I know for a while like frogs and mushrooms were viral, but like I would study the different kinds of like frogs and their diet and where they lived and how they interact with each other. I mean, it goes on a deeper level than just the surface of frogs and mushrooms. So yeah, those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head right now.
Yeah, like you said with childhood, that should have been one of the clues. I wouldn't just like read the Percy Jackson books and be like, okay, that was good. I would go to Barnes & Noble and I would buy Greek mythology books. I would buy the little like spin-off books for Percy Jackson. I would like look up the fan art. I would go so like wild in depth. I did that with a bunch of different book series. I did that with like Greek mythology for a long time. I feel like hobbies also kind of go hand in hand with like special interests. I myself kind of like will get so like insanely obsessed with something, whether it be a hobby, like just a in general topic of interest, a person, or whatever, and that still has followed me to this day. I will get like so like insanely obsessed to where it's like kind of like unhealthy almost, and then it'll kind of just like die off after a while, and then here comes the next one, and it's like that and that and that. But I think some of the most like fun special interests are just like the stupid ones. It's just like why? Like I love Garfield. Just anything Garfield, I'm like yes. Also, one of the ones that has really been coming out recently, we recently went to Red River, me and a group of my friends for spring break, and I saw a bunch of it there because it's around a lot. But like big fish, like I'm not a fisher. I don't go fishing. I used to when I was little, but like I'm not a fisherman. I don't like do all that. It's just, and it's not even like fish themselves. It's like things with fish on it. Like I seek that out. Like I have so many little things with like fish on it because I'm like that's funny. Like I just think it's funny. Or like I don't know, just like little things. A lot of times it's not even like the thing itself. It's just like stuff with that thing on it. Like teeth. I love like pictures of teeth, like little jewelry that look like teeth. Like I have a tooth tattoo. Like I just think that's fun. I don't know. It's just, and nothing like caused me to like that thing. Like I don't have any significance to it. I'm just like, yeah, that's cool. But yeah, I have some little silly ones like that. But yeah, I used to be like, I mean, I still am, but like, you know the whole like crystal girly thing? I was like so into rocks when I was little, and it just never really left me.
I love
so I'm
rocks.
like, yeah. So I'm a rock and crystal girly. I always have them on me in some way. Yeah, I also hyperfixate on bands a lot. Well, not anymore as much, but like in middle school, like that's all I would think about and do is like bands and stuff. But yeah.
I love anything, and if it has any form of instructions, like Legos, I love following the instructions. Like I've always been, had a special interest in cooking and baking, especially baking.
Because there's instructions.
There's step-by-steps things, and I also just like making pretty things. Like if the end goal is aesthetically pleasing,
Yes.
I love it. And like creating those types of things, I've always had a special interest in reading, and and I know it's like it's like a thing where like, you know, people who like reading, like they'll stay up super late or whatever. I have stayed up and like not gone to sleep the entire night because I was so into a book and I was unable, and I'm reading the book going, I need to go to bed, and not putting it down, and like not being able to stop, and like things like that. And then people are a special interest of mine. So autism, ADHD, like looking to things like that, but then also looking into like social cues. And I think that's why I got away with not looking autistic for so long, is that I research social cues. And like and I've like looked into like why people feel emotions, and like I have been told on many occasions that I should be a therapist, and I'm like, I really love talking to people and like learning about them, and this is gonna sound bad, dissecting them in my brain and like thinking about why they do every single thing that they do. But I don't actually want to be a therapist. I think the second I put a like job behind it, I would hate it.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I do the same thing, whether it be like just people in general. When you said people, I was like, oh boy, because like people, I used to be like so, well, I mean, I still am, I guess, but I used to be so into like psychology and stuff. I was before like coming to NSO, I was on the list for a psychology major, and at NSO I was like, change this up, let's not do that. But I was gonna be a psychology major just because like I was so interested in it, and but also just like, yeah, people like this kind of like goes hand in hand with like the masking and the picking up traits and all that, but I like will pick up people's traits like so intensely, and I'm not trying to copy them at all. I just like immediately I'm like,
That is a
I
very
pick them
common
up.
thing with autism
Yeah.
is copying.
Mirroring
Yeah,
and
because like
mimicking.
that's like if you see someone else do it, you think, oh, they're doing it, so that's okay, and that's fun, and that's cool, and whatever, so I'm gonna do it, so that, and then, but also just people like, I think about this a lot, but like if I have a crush on someone, it's not just like a crush. Like I will, it's not even just like the crush thing. It's just I get so interested in people, and I get so like deeply interested in people that it's like whatever. And I was like telling I think it was my roommate about this like not too long ago, and I didn't think about it as an autistic thing at first, and I was talking about it. I was like, I just feel crazy because I get so obsessed, and they were like, it's the autism, and I was like, oh, lol. But yeah, also I thought of another little funny special trait or special interest that I had as a kid, and it was a little yearly thing that came around. Every 9/11, they would come around. Shut up.
Where is this going?
I would get like way obsessed with 9/11. I don't know why, but every time 9/11 come around, they'd show the videos in class, and we have a day to talk about it. And I would go home, and I would like research 9/11 and watch 9/11 videos. Like this was like me in like elementary and like middle school. I would watch 9/11 videos like for a week after that, like just so intensely, and that's all I could think about for like a good week, and then it would like fade off, and then the next year would come around and it'd be like again, and I don't know why, but shut up.
I have gotten randomly obsessed with like not 9/11, but like historical things, like
Yeah.
like just like gotten hyper fixated or like is like, and I keep using that term. I don't know how else to describe it though. But like I've had random spurts of just like, I wonder what happened to like the bakers in like World War II. Like, did they still bake bread?
Yeah.
Like, there's a war happening. Were people still eating bread? Like, just things like that.
Right.
And like, or like, so what did like, what was it like shipping things? Like, how did they put them on the boat?
You're
like random things that nobody should be curious about. Just like I've had things like that where
Yeah.
I'm just like, has anyone ever thought about why things were made the way they were? Why weren't they made other ways? Like, stuff.
Yeah, and for people that don't understand what special interests are, because a lot of neurotypical people will be like, oh, well, everyone has hobbies that they enjoy, everyone has special interests that they enjoy. For autistic people specifically, a special interest is something that you are so drawn to and wanting to learn more about that you tend to learn minute details that, I mean, most people wouldn't commonly know. It's not common knowledge, and they do deep dive research, and they just know so much about this thing, and that's why it's kind of known as a special interest, is because when autistic people start talking about special interests of theirs, they'll go on, and that's actually one of the diagnostic things that they look for is something that you are really, really into, I guess, I don't know how else to phrase that, and see just how much you are able to share on that, because I think for autistic people, when you're talking about a special interest, you're not having to mirror and mimic someone else. It's from your own knowledge and your own kind of own database of something that you're really interested in. So you can talk about it and go on and on for almost hours. I saw this one girl post on TikTok that in her diagnosis report, the interviewer said that this girl looked like she really enjoyed season 2 of some certain TV show and looked like she really wanted to elaborate on it, but refrained from doing so. And that's because you enjoy it so much you need to tell other people. And I think that just goes along with people being like, it's so trendy for people to be autistic now, or for people to have really any sort of mental disability. And I think it's because, no, it's not trendy, but people feel more comfortable now being different and are seeking out answers and validation in their behaviors. And I mean, people make the same argument for like the LGBTQ plus community. It's, why are so many people gay now? I mean, it's because
you feel like you can be
exactly
you yourself and don't have to hide it as much.
It's a safer and more acceptable society that we're, building upon. So
Sorry.
I was just gonna say, for like kind of to help people understand like special interests, like one of my special interests is the Hunger Games, and so like
I just watched them today and yesterday. Me and my mom watched all of them in a row.
And so like somebody could like really like the Hunger Games and like, you know, wear like things about it, like look at fan art, like that type of thing. But they don't necessarily, you know, research why the author wrote all the names that they did, and notice that all of the capital names in some of the district, like higher up districts that have more money, are all Roman influenced. And that some of the characters, their deaths reflect the Roman, I literally looked into this recently. And so like Coriolanus, he, like that's Snow's first name, and his like path is similar to the Coriolanus from Roman history. And then like Katniss is a type of plant that is like the term is like it's part of the like Sagittarius family, which is the archerer, which is why she was named that. Like there's no like drive to want to learn all of that necessarily from someone who's neurotypical, but like I don't, like, for me, it feels like if I do not learn more about it, I don't have enough. Right. And I cannot stop learning about it, because otherwise I just don't feel like I have, like, I don't feel whole. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, as I learn things, I feel better.
Yeah.
And so, like, I don't have any control over the fact that I'm learning all these things about Hunger Games. Like, I can't stop.
Yeah. If you asked me middle school, any question about 21 Pilots, I'd be able to answer. I knew their birthdays, I knew their mom's names, I knew their mom's birthdays, like I knew everything. And that's how it was about like all my special interests in middle school. I would know like everything about it. But also like I feel like another thing with special interest is you surround yourself a lot with it. Like I said, I have a bunch of dumb little things with Garfield on it, or dumb little things with fish on it. Savannah has her like cute little like frog and mushroom stuff. And mushrooms used to be one of my little special, it's not really anymore. But you just like, you surround yourself with that, because like I feel like in a neurotypical world we kind of touched on like neurodivergent people feel so uncomfortable all the time, so they're trying to fill their world with things that make them feel happy and feel comfortable, and so they'll have a bunch of those things. And like in middle school, it made me think when you were talking about Hunger Games, there was like a few book series that I was like way like obsessed on, not just I liked, like I was obsessed with them, and it was like the Hunger Games, the Maze Runner series, Percy Jackson, there might have been another one, but like I would wear my hair to the side in a braid like every day for like a year in middle school, because it made me feel like Katniss, and I was like, I'm cool, like this is cool, because it made me think of that thing, and the thing that I was obsessed about, and made me happy, and so yeah.
Oh, I used to draw things on myself that were like part of series, and I remember I used to put my hair in a braid at night so that I could have the princess waves that Annabeth had described in the series, and that I wished I had been born blonde because I am naturally a brunette, and like I would do just crazy things. Like there was we used to watch all my mother's favorite television series, which are insanely nerdy, and there's a Star Trek television series in which there's a character called 5 of 9 or something, I can't remember right now, but she's part Borg, which is like cyborg thing, and she had like this thing on her face, and I found stickers, and I literally like put a bunch of them on my face, and to make myself look like, it was 7 of 9, to make myself look like her. And like, no, I was like 7 watching Star Trek and trying to make myself look like a cyborg, and like I wanted to learn everything about why the Borg had ever existed, and like just things like that. Like it's just
I think a
Not
lot
everyone
of
does that.
young autistic people try to like really put themselves in the world of the little like things that they like because it makes them feel more comfortable and stuff. Like, and I feel like that also kind of goes into like the whole like picking up traits and like masking and stuff. It's like you're trying to be this other thing because that's something that you think is cool and you like whatever. Because like there'd be like these woodsy areas of Boys Ranch where I went to school, and me and my friends would go and hang out in them all the time, and we'd have like sword fights with sticks, and we'd make forts and whatever. But whenever I'd go out there, or anytime I was walking outside in general, like I would try to like walk quietly, because she would talk about like walking quietly in the woods, or I would like do things and I'd be like, man, I'm literally her right now and all this stuff. And one time I orchestrated, like this was me in middle school, like probably like 7th or 8th grade, or no, probably like 6th or 7th grade, but I was just like this young girl, whatever, but I orchestrated for me and my friends this whole entire game where it was like we would play the Hunger Games, and I figured out where we would do it. I figured out where the cornucopia would be. It was this old fire pit that was kind of in the middle of the woodsy area that we did, so I was like, perfect. And I was trying to figure out like how would we like kill each other so that there could be a winner, so it's like an actual game. And I brought a bunch of bandanas, and I was like, it's gonna be like a capture the flag type, or like flag football type situation, so if your flag gets taken, that's how you die and whatever and all this stuff. And when we played it, I was like so excited and so hyped, and it made me feel so good because I'm like, I'm getting to do something for like my special interest and all this stuff. And I remember like there was only like 5 of us, so it went by very quickly, and we had a bunch of rounds. And I remember one round I climbed up into a tree and I sat there and waited for like a long time until a bunch of people were like dead or whatever. And this was like my peak moment of like my childhood, because I was sitting up in this tree and this family of deer walked below me, and they had no idea that I was up there, and I was just like watching them, and I was like, I'm literally her right now. I was like, this is it, and I was so excited. And I was like just having a fun little conversation with my therapist about this, because we were talking about special interest and things, and I was bringing this up, and she was like, did you plan that like for a long time? Did you think about that? And I was like, yes, it's all I could think about all week up until we played it. And then afterwards I was like, we should do this again sometime, you guys. Like we should keep doing this and stuff. And yeah, I think, yeah, it's just fun.
I think it's interesting, like things like that. Just real quick, have you guys ever felt like you, like in your brain have sometimes been like playing to the camera, like that doesn't exist because you're so used to having to mask and like people perceiving you, that even when there's no one there to perceive you, you're doing things as if you're being perceived anyway.
No, literally.
Like sometimes
sometimes I feel like I'm in a YouTube video at all times or something. So I'm like,
or like something like The Office or whatever, where you're just like, you're doing something and you're like, I'm gonna change. Oh, they're gonna notice, so I have to adjust my leg like this because they're paying attention.
yeah, or I'll try
There's
to
no
like
one there.
be funny even though I'm alone. I'll like do a thing and I'll like look at someone but no one's really there, and I'm like, like I'll just, like yeah.
I'll be walking through the hallways, and sometimes, like, this goes back to kind of what I said about music, because it just will make me feel empowered. And sure, music makes everyone feel empowered, but sometimes just to like walk through the hallway, I'll need to put in like my earbuds and listen to like Boss Bitch by Rihanna.
Yes.
Or whoever, I forgot who that's by. Anyway, and it's just like walk through, and it'll help me be like, or like flip my hair a certain way, or like adjust, and it just helps me feel like I'm able to like function like a main character in a movie, I think, because I perceived protagonists to be like the ideal for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to do that in high school all the time. I'd have certain playlists for like certain things, and like I'd have certain songs for certain like situations. Like if I'm walking in the lunchroom, I'd like play something so that I feel cool or whatever. I kind of still do that, but now I just use music as just like in general something to listen to like keep me grounded, so I don't feel like everything is too much or whatever. But yeah, I definitely used to do that like all the time.
I find myself being very aware of how I walk.
Yes!
And I'm like, am I walking like a normal person? Or because I'm thinking about how I'm walking, am I now walking weird? Are people watching me walk? They're totally watching me
I
walk.
tried to ask someone about that one time. I think, well, one time I talked to one of my friends about this, and then another time I like told my mom about how the fact that I always feel like I'm walking weird, or like I don't know how to walk right or whatever, and she's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, Mom, I don't know, I just feel like I walk stupid. And she was like, you walk normal. And I'm like, okay, well, good, I guess, but I feel like I'm not.
Or how you're apparently supposed to swing your arms as you walk. I
Yes.
don't do that.
Wait,
I just,
have y'all,
it's
do
strange.
y'all,
That's
do
because
y'all-
I'm so stiff as a person. person, which is autism, but...
Do y'all know like the dinosaur hands thing? My best friend does that. He does it more like actual like dinosaur hands. Like when he walks, he does it. It was funny because someone mentioned like they weren't making fun of him or anything, but he was salutatory, and so when he walked across stage, they said that he walked like this, and I was like, oh my god. But that's why I always have little things for my hands to do, and I always have rings on, and if I don't, I have my little things that I do with my hands because I don't know what to do with my hands, and so I'm always like holding them at my like stomach area, like using
neurotypical
them.
people think about their limbs. Because I am always thinking about what they're doing.
Wait, because, okay, so I need to talk about this because people who are watching this podcast are probably people who go to our school. When I dap you up, I'm sorry that it's not in the bro way. That's like, yeah, I have to. I need the grip. I have to grip
So
you.
like, you like,
So like, gosh, I'm trying to think of how I used to do it. Because I've like changed now. I've masked it to be regular. But like, if I dapped you up, I go like I need to. It's because I think I just function very stiffly, and I need to feel all of my like digits elongated at once.
I don't remember who I was talking to about this, but it's making me think about it now. But as actors, is it ever like really hard for you to put like organic movement into monologues? Because I struggle.
I don't move organically normally. Why am I supposed to act that way?
That's what I was thinking, because I always used to think like I'm not a good actor. I'm not a good enough actor because I don't know how to just like organically use my hands and not double gesture and not do like the really acty type of things that that you think about doing. And everyone's like, just do like the like normal movements when you're talking and like whatever. And sometimes I can be very expressive with my hands like I am now, but other times I'm not, and I don't know what to do with my hands, so I keep them like this. And I feel like that plays a lot into being an actor, and especially just like standalone things like monologues and stuff are very hard for me to figure out what to do with my hands and my arms because I don't know what to do with my hands and arms in real life, So it's like, how would I know how to do that in an acting when people are even more so watching me,
I always find, and I've been told it was like a thing that I did in acting, but then I realized, no, I just do this. Normally is I like to just wide, and so you'll notice I'm either like doing things or I'm holding my hands together.
Exactly.
Because the only way to not move my hands, sometimes it doesn't work because I'm trying to do it even with my hands together, is to hold on to each other. Because if I have like one hand here, I'm still gonna be like I've been doing this entire time. Like I just talk with my hands, and I don't think. And but as I talk, I'm thinking about where my hands are going and what they're doing, and I don't think that neurotypical people do that. Or at least they're not aware of the fact that like every minute thing that they do. Like I'm thinking about, am I blinking enough?
I think so too. And someone made fun of me for saying that. I was like, okay.
How much eye contact am I making right now? How much should I look away? How much whatever?
Can they tell it I'm looking at their nose or their eyebrow and not their eyeball? Because why do I have to look at the eyeball?
Yeah. I talked about this in like a couple paragraphs in my journal for Echo last year about how for autistic people in general, I mean, obviously it's a spectrum, doesn't apply to everyone, but we don't really gesture or have these little body language signals that everyone like neurotypicals do. And so I'm not really a big gesturer, or at least I don't perceive myself to be. So when I'm trying to work that into monologues or to a scene or something, it takes a lot of study of outside sources like movies, or maybe just I'll study my group of friends when everyone else is talking, looking to see what gestures they're doing and what movements, so I can incorporate that into a monologue or a scene in order to appear more natural, even though for me it's the fakest thing I can do, is because I've planned all of these tiny little movements that I can do.
And I think part of my masking is I learned that I noticed that I didn't get a response, like a physical response to people while talking, if I didn't do something physical. So like if we're having a conversation and somebody's talking and they say something, I like to like yes or yes. And I find like I'll be like, we're in a classroom and the teacher's talking and I'm like the whole time. And I notice nobody else's head has moved ever. But I'm like, if I'm not actively showing you that I'm listening, I feel like you don't know and you're gonna get upset with me. So part of my thing has always been that I'm somebody who's like, anyone's talking and I'm like, or yes, yeah. And I do things because I'm trying to ensure that they know that I'm listening, because apparently my face doesn't look like it's listening.
Right. Well, we feel like we have to make up for, what we don't have. So maybe we might be doing, over gesturing or just to try to seem like we're fitting in, which goes back to masking.
I started nodding and then realized I was nodding because I was doing the thing I talked about.
Yeah. Silly little things.
Anywho, I do need to be done around 8:30. It is 8:21 right now.
I think we've talked enough. We started
Yeah.
getting really excited towards the end.
I know.
I think we were like, let's just get 5 more minutes, and then talked for like 30, so I think we're good.
Yeah. I think we've had lots of nice footage. I don't really know a way to wrap, but you know.
Thank you all for listening and watching. Perfect, first try.
Okay, wait. Just one person needs to say it. We are not synchronous.
Keep it.
And this is what's gonna play as the outro music comes
Yeah.
in.
Oh.
Thanks,
We just hear
everyone.
that.
Us being unsure of how to end it, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm sure it's on brand for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do it back next time.
Yeah. But thank y'all. Hope y'all enjoyed and tune in for the next one for sure.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.